The snow fell in silence over Helena Memorial Park the way it always did in Montana winters. Thick and steady, relentless, the kind of cold that made your breath hang in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. It was 8:45 on a Thursday night in January, and the temperature had dropped to 10 degrees below zero. The park was supposed to be empty. The iron gates were supposed to be locked. The benches were supposed to be buried under 2 feet of white that nobody had bothered to shovel. But Marcus Reeves was there anyway. He sat alone on the only bench that mattered, the one directly in front of the black granite memorial, the one nobody else ever used because it faced the wall engraved with names. 73 names, 73 K-9 handlers who had died in service. 73 men and women who had walked into fire with their dogs and never walked back out. Marcus knew every single name. He had trained 11 of them. He was wearing his old army jacket, the one with the frayed collar and the faded insignia patch on the shoulder that used to say 2nd Battalion, 4th Infantry, but now just looked like a smudge. The jacket was too thin for this kind of cold, but he wore it anyway because it was the only piece of his old life that still fit. 62 pounds lighter than he used to be, hair gone white, hands that shook when he tried to hold a coffee cup steady, but the jacket still fit. He sat with his back straight, shoulders square, the way he had been trained to sit 50 years ago when posture still mattered and respect was something you earned by the way you carried yourself. His hands were folded in his lap. His eyes were fixed on the wall. He was not praying. He was not grieving. He was simply there, present, the way a soldier stands watch, the way you honor the dead when words stopped meaning anything a long time ago. The wind cut across the open field behind him and rattled through the bare branches of the oak trees that lined the north side of the park. Somewhere in the distance, a truck rolled down Main Street with chains on the tires. The sound echoed and faded. Then there was nothing again. Just the snow, just the cold, just Marcus Reeves sitting in front of a wall of names that nobody else remembered. He did not hear the patrol car pull into the parking lot. He did not see the headlights sweep across the frozen grass. He did not notice the cruiser door open and close with a metallic thunk that split the silence like an axe through wood. But he felt it, the shift in the air, the presence of another human being invading a space that had been his and his alone for the last hour. He did not turn around. He did not move. He just sat there with his hands folded and his eyes on the wall and waited. The footsteps came slow at first, boots crunching through snow, heavy, deliberate. The gait of someone who was not in a hurry but wanted you to know they were coming. Then the footsteps stopped about 15 feet behind the bench. Silence. Marcus waited. A voice broke the quiet, young, male, clipped with the kind of authority that had not been earned but assumed. Parks closed. Marcus did not respond. He kept his eyes on the wall, on the names, on the one name 3 rows from the bottom that still made his chest tighten every time he saw it. Sergeant First Class Daniel Wright, K-9 handler. Killed in action, Helmand Province. Afghanistan, 2012. The voice came again, sharper this time, irritated. "Old man, I said the park's closed." Marcus exhaled slowly, watched his breath curl into the frozen air and disappear. Then he spoke. His voice was low, calm, the voice of a man who had spent 32 years giving orders and twice that long learning when not to. "I know what time it is." The footsteps moved closer, faster now. The crunch of boots, deliberate and aggressive. They stopped directly behind the bench, close enough that Marcus could hear the leather of the duty belt creak, close enough to smell the faint trace of cologne mixed with coffee and the metallic tang of gun oil. "Then you know you're not supposed to be here." Marcus turned his head, slowly, just enough to glance over his shoulder. The officer standing behind him was young, 28 at most, white, clean-shaven, buzz cut so tight you could see the pale skin of his scalp beneath the stubble. His uniform was crisp, pressed, the kind of sharp creases that came from someone who cared more about how they looked than what they did. His hand rested on his belt, not on his weapon, not yet, but close. The posture of a man who wanted you to know he could reach it if he needed to. His name tag read Draven. Marcus looked at him for exactly 2 seconds. Then he turned back to the wall. I'm paying my respects. Officer Blake Draven stepped around the bench, positioned himself directly in Marcus's line of sight, blocking the memorial, blocking the names. His arms crossed over his chest, his jaw set. The universal stance of someone who had decided this conversation was going to go one way and one way only. Paying respects. Blake's tone dripped with something between amusement and contempt. To what, a bunch of dead dogs? Marcus's hands tightened slightly in his lap, the only visible sign that the words had landed, but his face remained calm, neutral, the mask he had learned to wear a long time ago when anger became a luxury he could not afford. To handlers, Marcus said quietly, men and women who gave their lives in service, same as any soldier. Blake snorted, actually snorted, like the idea was funny. What war did you even fight in Old Man Iraq? That was like 20 years ago. You even remember it. Marcus did not answer. He simply looked at Blake, really looked at him, took in the arrogance, the casual disrespect, the way this young officer stood in front of a memorial to the dead and acted like it meant nothing, like the names carved into that stone were just decorations, like the men and women who had bled out in foreign deserts holding their dogs in their arms were just statistics. Blake mistook the silence for weakness. Yeah, that's what I thought. He unfolded his arms, hooked his thumbs into his belt. Park closes at 9 p.m., city ordinance, and you've got about 10 minutes to clear out before I have to write you up for trespassing. Marcus's voice stayed level, almost gentle. I'll be gone in 5. Blake shook his head, smiled, the kind of smile that did not reach his eyes. No, you'll be gone now. He stepped closer, close enough that Marcus had to tilt his head back slightly to maintain eye contact, close enough to be a threat, close enough to make it clear that this was not a request. This was an order. And Blake Draven was the kind of man who expected his orders to be followed without question. Marcus considered his options. He could stand. He could leave. He could walk away and let this young officer with his pressed uniform and his inflated sense of authority have his little victory. That would be the smart thing, the easy thing, the thing that would not escalate into something neither of them needed. But then Marcus's eyes shifted, just for a moment, past Blake's shoulder, to the patrol car idling in the parking lot 30 yards away. The engine running, exhaust curling into the frozen air, and in the back seat behind the cage, he saw the outline of something moving, a dog. Marcus's entire body went still. The kind of stillness that comes from years of training, the kind of stillness that separates veterans from civilians, the kind of stillness that means you have seen something that changes the entire equation. Blake noticed. His smile widened. Oh, you see my partner back there? He turned slightly, gestured toward the cruiser. That's Valor, best K9 on the force, 85 pounds of pure aggression. Bite force strong enough to snap a man's arm in half. You want me to introduce you? Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at the cruiser, at the shadow moving restlessly behind the cage, at the outline of a German shepherd pacing back and forth in the confined space. And something in his chest twisted, because even from 30 yards away in the dark, he could see the way the dog moved, the tension in the shoulders, the lowered head, the obsessive pacing that had nothing to do with alertness and everything to do with stress. That was not a dog at ease. That was a bone in distress. Blake was still talking, his voice smug, confident. Valor's a little high-strung, hasn't eaten in 2 days because he keeps refusing commands. Handler before me said he was untrainable, but I'm fixing that. Sometimes you have to break a dog down before you can build it back up. You know what I mean? Marcus's hands clenched into fists in his lap, but his voice when he spoke was still calm, still controlled. You're withholding food as a training method. Blake shrugged. It's called discipline, something your generation understood. That's not discipline, Marcus said quietly. That's abuse. The smile vanished from Blake's face. His posture shifted, shoulders squared, chest out. The transition from cocky to aggressive happened in less than a second. Excuse me? Marcus stood up, slowly. His knees protested, his back protested. 72 years of wear and tear compressing vertebrae and grinding cartilage until standing was an act of will as much as physics. But he stood anyway, and when he did, he was exactly 2 inches shorter than Officer Blake Draven. But the way he stood, the way he held himself, the quiet authority that radiated from every controlled movement made Blake take an involuntary half-step backward. You're abusing that dog, Marcus said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. And if you keep doing it, you're going to ruin him. Blake's face flushed red, anger or embarrassment, or both. Who the hell do you think you are? Someone who spent 32 years training K-9 units for the United States Army, Marcus said evenly. Someone who knows what a stressed dog looks like. And that dog is stressed. Blake stared at him. For a moment, it looked like he might actually back down. Like some small part of his brain was processing the information and recognizing that maybe this old man in the worn-out jacket actually knew what he was talking about. Then the moment passed. Blake's hand dropped to his radio. He keyed the mic clip to his shoulder. Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I need backup at Helena Memorial Park. Possible 10:15. He paused, looked Marcus up and down with open contempt. Suspect is being uncooperative. Marcus did not move, did not react, just stood there with his hands at his sides and his eyes locked on Blake's face. I'm not resisting, Marcus said calmly. I'm leaving. Too late for that. For 2 more patrol cars pulled into the parking lot. Lights flashing, no sirens. Just the red and blue strobes cutting through the darkness and reflecting off the snow. 2 officers climbed out, both young, both white, both moving with the casual confidence of men who had never been challenged in their entire lives. They approached with hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning Marcus like he was a threat. Like this 72-year-old man in a threadbare jacket was someone who required 3 armed officers to subdue. Blake turned to his backup, gestured at Marcus. Subject was trespassing. Refused to leave when ordered. Started making threats. Marcus's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice level. I did not threaten anyone. He said he was going to ruin my day. Blake shot back, turned to the other officers. That sounds like a threat to me. One of the backup officers, a stocky man in his early 30s with a thick neck and cold eyes, stepped forward. Sir, we need you to show us some identification. Marcus reached slowly into his jacket pocket, pulled out his wallet, handed over his driver's license without a word. The officer examined it, read the name aloud. Marcus Reeves, 72 years old. He looked up. You live here in Helena. 20 minutes outside city limits, Marcus said. Off Route 12. The officer handed the license back, but he did not step away. Instead, he exchanged a glance with Blake. Something passed between them. Some unspoken communication that Marcus could not read, but did not like. Blake's smile returned, colder this time. Hey, Marcus, you said you train K-9 units. That true? Marcus hesitated. Every instinct he had built over 7 decades told him not to answer. Told him this was a trap, but lying would only make things worse. Yes. Army, yes. What years? 1972 to 2004. Blake's smile widened. He turned to his cruiser, opened the back door, and the German shepherd that had been pacing inside the cage exploded out into the night. 85 pounds of muscle and fur, and barely controlled aggression hit the frozen ground and immediately went tense. Head low, ears pinned flat against the skull, hackles raised along the ridge of the spine, a low rumble vibrating deep in the chest, not a growl, not yet, but the precursor, the warning, the sound a dog makes when it is deciding whether to attack or retreat and has not made up its mind yet. Valor. The dog's eyes locked onto Marcus, amber eyes reflecting the red and blue lights from the patrol cars. Wild eyes, stressed eyes, the eyes of an animal that had been pushed too far for too long and was one command away from snapping. Blake held the leash, kept it short, kept the tension high. He looked at Marcus with something close to glee. Valor, watch. The dog's rumble deepened, its entire body coiled like a spring, muscles bunching beneath the dark fur, lips curling back just enough to show the edge of white teeth. Blake took a step forward. Valor moved with him, stayed locked onto Marcus. Every ounce of the dog's attention focused on the old man standing in front of the memorial wall. "You know what's funny," Blake said, his voice casual, conversational, like he was discussing the weather. "Valor here doesn't like strangers, especially not mouthy old men who think they know better than everyone else." Marcus did not move, did not speak. His eyes were not on Blake. They were on Valor. On the way the dog held itself, on the tremor in the hindquarters, on the rapid, shallow breathing, on every micro expression of stress and fear and confusion that was radiating from that animal like heat from a fire. This was not an aggressive dog. This was a terrified dog being forced to act aggressive. Blake stepped closer. Valor stepped closer, 5 feet away now, close enough that Marcus could see the saliva stringing between the dog's teeth, close enough to hear the ragged breathing, close enough to smell the fear. "Valor," Blake said, his voice sharp, commanding. "Attack position." The dog's hackles rose higher. The rumble turned into a growl. Low, guttural, the sound of an animal being pushed past its breaking point. But it did not attack. Blake frowned, jerked the leash. "Valor, attack position, now." The dog flinched, dropped lower to the ground, but still did not move forward. Its eyes flicked between Marcus and Blake, confused, uncertain, caught between what it was being ordered to do and what every instinct was telling it not to do. Blake's face darkened. He turned to the other officers. "Dog's been like this all week. Won't follow commands, won't engage. I've been trying to retrain him, but he's stubborn." One of the backup officers shook his head. "Maybe he's just not cut out for this work. Or maybe he just needs the right motivation," Blake said. He looked at Marcus. "How about it, old man? You said you're a trainer. Want to see what happens when a K9 gets aggressive?" Marcus's voice cut through the cold air. Calm, steady, absolute. "Don't." Blake's eyebrows shot up. "Don't what?" "Don't give that command," Marcus said quietly. "That dog doesn't want to attack. You're forcing him into a position where he has no choice. And when he finally snaps, it won't be because he's aggressive. It'll be because you pushed him there." Blake's face twisted into something ugly. "I don't need training advice from some washed-up old man who probably hasn't worked with a dog in 20 years. 5, Marcus said. Blake blinked. "What?" "5 years. Afghanistan, 2019. I was a civilian contractor, training K9 units for IED detection. I know what I'm talking about." Blake stared at him. Then he laughed, actually laughed, loud enough that the sound echoed across the empty park. "You a contractor? At 70 years old?" He shook his head. "Yeah, sure you were." Marcus did not respond. He just looked at Blake, then at Valor, then back at Blake. And in that moment, Blake saw something in the old man's eyes that made him hesitate. Just for a second. Just long enough to register that maybe, just maybe. Marcus Reeves was not someone to be dismissed. But Blake was young and arrogant and surrounded by backup. and convinced that he was in control. So he doubled down. He shortened the leash, pulled Valor forward, gave the command that would change everything. Valor, attack him. The dog's entire body went rigid. Blake repeated the command, louder this time, angrier. Valor, attack him. Do it now. The growl stopped. The hackles stayed raised, but the rumble in the chest faded. Valor's ears, which had been pinned flat against the skull, slowly shifted forward, tilted, like the dog was listening to something Blake could not hear. And then Valor took a step, not toward Marcus, toward him, but not in aggression, in recognition. The dog's head lifted, nostrils flared, drawing in air, processing scent, cross-referencing against a database of smells stored somewhere deep in the animal's memory. And then, slowly, almost cautiously, Valor took another step. Blake yanked the leash, hard. Valor, what the hell are you doing? I said, attack. But the dog was not listening anymore. Valor pulled against the leash, straining toward Marcus. The growl was completely gone now, replaced by something else. A sound halfway between a whine and a whimper. The sound a dog makes when it recognizes someone it has not seen in a long time. Marcus's breath caught in his chest. He knew that sound. Valor took another step, and another, pulling Blake forward despite the officer's attempts to hold him back. The dog's entire demeanor had shifted. The tension was draining from the shoulders. The lips were no longer curled. The eyes were still locked on Marcus, but now they were wide, bright, almost desperate. And then Valor did something that made Blake Draven freeze. The dog sat down, right in front of Marcus, tail wagging. The old man stared down at the German shepherd sitting at his feet, at the amber eyes looking up at him with something that was not aggression or fear or stress. It was trust. It was hope. It was the look a dog gives to someone it knows, someone it remembers, someone it loves. Marcus's hand moved without conscious thought, reached out slowly, fingers extended, palm down, the universal gesture of offering a scent, the first step in building trust with any dog. Valor leaned forward, pressed his nose into Marcus's palm, inhaled deeply, and then, with a sound that could only be described as pure relief, the dog's tail began to wag harder. Blake was staring, his mouth open, his grip on the leash slack. What the hell? Marcus knelt down, slowly, his knees screaming in protest. But he knelt anyway, brought himself down to the dog's level. And Valor, without hesitation, without command, pressed his head against Marcus's chest. The old man's hand came up, rested on the back of Valor's neck, right where the hackles had been raised just moments before. He could feel the tension still there, could feel the tremor in the muscles, could feel how thin the dog was beneath all that fur. "Hey, boy," Marcus whispered, his voice so quiet that only Valor could hear. I know. It's okay now." Valor whimpered again, pressed harder against Marcus's chest, and then did something that made every officer in that park go silent. The dog began to shake, not from cold, from emotion. The kind of full-body tremor that comes from an animal that has been holding itself together for so long that the moment it feels safe again, everything just breaks. Valor was shaking against Marcus's chest like a leaf in a storm, and Marcus just held him, one hand on the dog's neck, the other coming up to rest between the shoulder blades. Steady, firm. The touch of someone who had spent a lifetime reading the language of animals and knew exactly what this one needed. Blake finally found his voice. How do you know my dog?" Marcus looked up. His eyes met Blake's, and when he spoke, his voice was no longer calm. It was cold. "This is not your dog. This is Valor, K9 designation 479er, trained for explosive detection in Kandahar province, Afghanistan, 2019. I trained him myself from the time he was 18 months old. Spent 6 months with him in the field before he was transferred stateside for medical retirement after taking shrapnel in his left shoulder. Blake's face had gone pale. That's impossible. I was told Valor came from a breeder in Colorado. He's only been on the force for 8 months. Then someone lied to you, Marcus said quietly. He stood up. Slowly. Valor stood with him, stayed pressed against his leg. Because this dog and I saved 12 lives together, and he remembers. One of the backup officers, a tall man with gray at his temples, stepped forward. Sir, if what you're saying is true, we can verify that. Military records, training logs. Marcus nodded. I have copies at home. Certificates, photos, the whole deployment file. Blake was shaking his head, backing up, his hand going to his radio. No, this is bullshit. You're making this up. You're trying to interfere with police business. I'm telling you the truth, Marcus said, and that dog just confirmed it. Blake's face twisted, anger replacing confusion. He grabbed the leash, yanked it hard enough that Valor stumbled. Get in the car, now. Valor did not move. The dog looked up at Marcus, then back at Blake, confused again, torn between command and connection. Blake yanked harder. I said get in the car. Marcus's hand came down, rested on Valor's head. Easy, he said softly, to the dog, not to Blake. It's okay. And that single gesture, that tiny act of comfort directed at a dog instead of an officer, that was what finally pushed Blake Draven over the edge. That's it. You're under arrest. Marcus looked up. For what? Interfering with a police K-9, trespassing, resisting lawful orders. Blake turned to his backup. Cuff him. The stocky officer hesitated. Blake, come on. He's 72 years old and he's clearly got history with the dog. Maybe we should just... I said cuff him. Blake's voice cracked, loud enough to echo across the park, loud enough that windows lit up in the apartment building 2 blocks away, loud enough that people started to notice. And that was when Marcus saw her. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, black, wearing a purple winter coat 3 sizes too big, and snow boots that squelched when she walked. She was standing at the edge of the parking lot, next to a woman in scrubs who was probably her mother, and in her small gloved hands she was holding something. A phone. Recording. The girl's mother noticed the officers, started to pull her daughter back toward their car, but the girl planted her feet, kept the phone up, kept recording. Blake had not noticed yet. He was too busy pulling handcuffs from his belt, stepping toward Marcus with the kind of aggressive posture that was meant to intimidate. Hands behind your back. Now. Marcus looked at the girl, at the phone, at the red recording light visible even from 30 yards away. Then he looked back at Blake and made a choice. He put his hands behind his back. Blake grabbed his wrist. Rough. Harder than necessary. Yanked it up at an angle that made Marcus's shoulder protest. Slapped the first cuff on. Tightened it 2 clicks past what was required. Then grabbed the other wrist. Did the same thing. The metal was cold. Colder than the air. Colder than the snow. It bit into Marcus's wrists and he felt the circulation slow. Felt his fingers start to go numb. But he did not resist. Did not pull away. Just stood there with his hands cuffed behind his back while a 28-year-old officer with a God complex and a badge treated him like a criminal. Valor was going insane. The dog was barking now, not the aggressive bark Blake had been trying to force out of him earlier. Man, this was different. This was distress. This was about watching someone it trusted being hurt and not understanding why. Valor lunged against the leash, tried to get to Marcus, tried to put himself between the old man and Blake. Blake jerked the leash so hard Valor's front legs came off the ground. Shut up, sit now. Valor did not sit. Valor kept barking, kept pulling, kept trying to protect Marcus the same way Marcus had once protected him. The girl with the phone took 3 steps closer. Her mother hissed something, but the girl ignored her. She held the phone up higher, made sure the angle captured everything. Blake's face, Marcus's calm expression, Valor's desperation, all of it. Blake turned, finally noticed the girl, finally saw the phone. Hey, you stop recording. The girl did not stop. Blake took a step toward her. I said stop recording. That's interfering with police business. The girl's mother stepped forward, positioned herself between Blake and her daughter. Her voice was steady, but there was fear in her eyes. She's on public property. She has a right to film. Not when it's an act of arrest, Blake shot back. I can confiscate that phone as evidence. Try it, the mother said quietly, and see what happens. Blake stared at her. You could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The realization that things were spiraling, that this was not going the way he had planned, that he had an audience now, and the audience had cameras. He turned back to Marcus, grabbed the old man's arm. Let's go. He started to pull Marcus toward the patrol car. Marcus walked, did not resist, did not fight, just walked with his hands cuffed behind his back and his head up and his eyes forward. And Valor. Valor went completely wild. The dog thrashed against the leash, barking, howling, the sound raw and desperate and heartbreaking. Blake tried to drag him toward the cruiser, but Valor planted his feet, refused to move. All 85 pounds of him locked in place. One of the backup officers stepped in. Blake, let me take the dog. You transport the suspect. Blake hesitated, then shoved the leash at the other officer. Yeah, fine. Get him back to the kennel, lock him up. No food, no water, not tonight. The officer took the leash, started to lead Valor away. The dog resisted, pulled back, looked at Marcus with those wee, desperate amber eyes, and Marcus, standing with his back against the patrol car and his hands cuffed, and 3 armed officers surrounding him. Marcus looked at Valor and did the only thing he could do. He spoke. One word, quiet but firm. The kind of command that had been drilled into that dog 5 years ago in a war zone halfway around the world. Stay. Valor's barking stopped. The dog stood there, trembling, staring at Marcus. Stay strong, Marcus said. His voice was so quiet that Blake almost missed it. I'll come back for you. Blake's eyes narrowed. He opened the back door of the cruiser, grabbed Marcus by the shoulder, shoved him inside, hard enough that the old man's head hit the frame, hard enough that a thin line of blood appeared at Marcus's temple. The little girl with the phone gasped. Her mother pulled out her own phone, started recording. Blake slammed the door, looked at the 2 women, at the phones, at the small crowd that was starting to gather at the edge of the parking lot. People who had heard the shouting, seen the lights, come to see what the noise was about. He walked back toward the memorial, toward the bench where Marcus had been sitting. And that was when he saw it, Marcus's wallet, lying in the snow where it had fallen when Blake had grabbed him. Blake picked it up, opened it, and inside, tucked behind the driver's license, was a photo, a younger Marcus, maybe 50 years old, in desert camouflage, kneeling in the sand. And beside him, sitting at perfect attention, was a German Shepherd puppy, 18 months old, ears too big for its head, eyes bright and eager, and written on the back of the photo in faded ink, Valor, Day 1, Kandahar, 2019. Blake stared at the photo, at the proof that everything Marcus had said was true, that this was not some random old man interfering with police business. This was a veteran, a trainer, someone who had every right to question what was happening to that dog. Blake looked at the photo for exactly 5 seconds. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A folding knife, small, black handle, 3-inch blade. He looked around, made sure no one was watching. The other officers were dealing with Valor. The crowd was focused on the patrol car. The girl with the phone had her back turned. Blake knelt down, opened Marcus's jacket, and slipped the knife into the inner pocket. Smooth, practiced, like he had done it before. Then he stood up, walked back to his cruiser, climbed into the driver's seat, and before pulling away, he picked up his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. Show one in custody. Marcus Reeves, 72 years old. Charges are trespassing, resisting lawful orders." And he paused, let the word hang in the air. Possession of a concealed weapon with intent to assault an officer. The dispatcher's voice crackled back, confused. "Weapon? You didn't mention a weapon in your initial call." Blake looked in the rearview mirror, at Marcus sitting in the back seat, at the blood trickling down the old man's temple, at the calm expression that had not changed despite everything. "Just found it," Blake said, hidden in his jacket, folding knife, 3 inches. "Guy's lucky I didn't have to defend myself." In the back seat, Marcus's eyes met Blake's in the mirror, and for the first time since this whole thing started, Marcus smiled, not a friendly smile, not a warm smile. The smile of a man who knew exactly what game was being played, and who had been playing it longer than Blake Draven had been alive. Blake looked away first. He put the cruiser in drive, pulled out of the parking lot, and as he drove past the little girl with the purple coat and the phone, Blake did not see her watching him go, did not see her lower the phone, did not see her turn to her mother and whisper 5 words. "Mama, they hurt the grandpa." The cruiser disappeared down Main Street, lights flashing, no siren, just the quiet whine of the engine and the crunch of snow under the tires. Behind them, in the parking lot, Valor was still barking, and in the distance, getting quieter with every second. Marcus Reeves sat in the back of a police car with his hands cuffed behind his back and blood running down his face, heading toward a jail cell, charged with crimes he did not commit, separated from a dog he had not seen in 5 years but had never forgotten. And all he could think about was a promise he had made. "I'll come back for you." The snow kept falling. The park sat empty. And 73 names on a black granite wall watched in silence as one more veteran was taken away by the very system he had spent his life serving. The holding cell at Helena Police Department smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Bleach mixed with sweat mixed with the particular odor of too many men confined in too small a space for too long. The walls were cinder block, painted gray. Or they had been gray once. Now they were just stained, water damage, handprints, things Marcus did not want to think about. The cell was 10 feet by 12 feet, 2 metal benches bolted to opposite walls, a toilet in the corner with no seat, and a sink that dripped every 4 seconds like a metronome counting down to nothing. Fluorescent lights overhead buzzing with a frequency that made Marcus's teeth hurt. And bars. Thick steel bars painted the same industrial gray as everything else. Marcus sat on the bench closest to the bars, hands resting on his knees, back straight despite the pain radiating from his shoulder where Blake had wrenched his arm. The blood on his temple had dried, crusted. He had not bothered to wipe it away. There was no point, no mirror, no way to see how bad it looked. And even if there was, he would not have cared. He was not alone. 2 other men occupied the cell, both older, both black, both wearing the same 1,000-yard stare that Marcus had seen in too many faces over too many years. The look of men who had survived things they were not supposed to survive and were still trying to figure out what to do with all that survival. The man on Marcus's bench was maybe 60, thin, graying beard cut close to the jaw. He wore a faded Army PT shirt under a denim jacket. The shirt was old enough that the print had cracked and peeled until you could barely read the words. But Marcus could make out enough. 2nd Infantry Division. Korea. The man's hands were scarred, knuckles swollen from arthritis or old breaks or both. The other man sat across from them. Younger, mid-50s, broader through the shoulders, Marine Corps tattoo on his forearm, An eagle globe and anchor that had blurred and spread with age until it looked like a shadow of itself. He had his eyes closed, breathing slow and measured, the kind of breathing you learn in basic training when you need to calm your heart rate, when you need to center yourself before everything goes sideways. Nobody had spoken in 20 minutes. Marcus broke the silence, his voice quiet but clear in the small space. "What are you in for?" The man with the army shirt looked up, studied Marcus for a long moment, taking in the blood, the bruise forming along the jawline, the calm expression that did not match the damage. "They say I assaulted an officer," he said finally. His voice was rough, worn down by cigarettes or shouting or both. "I say I asked him why he pulled me over for going 40 in a 45. Marcus nodded, did not ask for more, did not need to. The story told itself. The Marine opened his eyes, looked at Marcus with the kind of direct assessment that comes from years of evaluating threats. "You're the K9 guy." It was not a question. Marcus met his gaze. "How do you know that?" "Heard Blake on the radio when they brought you in. Said you were interfering with his doom. Making threats." The Marine's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "Blake's full of shit." "Usually is," the Army veteran added. "Kid's got a god complex and a daddy who runs the whole county. Bad combination." Marcus filed that information away, said nothing. The Marine leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Name's Jerome. Jerome Carter. Gunnery sergeant. Retired. 22 years. The other man nodded. "Curtis Washington. Sergeant first class. 30 years. Retired 2008. Marcus looked at both of them. Two veterans. Two men who had served. Two men sitting in a jail cell on charges that were probably as fabricated as his own. "Marcus Reeves, Colonel, retired 2004. He paused. "You said Blake's father runs the county." Curtis snorted. "Sheriff Tom Draven, biggest snake in Montana, been sheriff for 15 years. Before that, he was. Well, nobody really knows. Story is he moved here in the late 90s, married into money, worked his way up through local politics. Now he owns half the county commissioners, and the other half are too scared to cross him." Jerome nodded. "His son Blake is just like him. Maybe worse. At least Tom pretends to care about the law. Blake does not even bother." Marcus's jaw tightened. He could feel the pieces starting to fall into place. The arrogance, the casual abuse of power, the way Blake had planted that knife like it was routine, like he had done it before, like he knew there would be no consequences. "How many people has Blake arrested this year?" Marcus asked. Curtis and Jerome exchanged a look. "In this cell," Curtis said, "just us three. But I heard there were others, 12, maybe 15, all veterans, black or Latino, all on bullshit charges that got dropped after a few days." "Why drop them?" "Because Tom's not stupid," Jerome said. "He knows if he actually prosecutes, he might have to show evidence. Easier to just arrest. Hold for 72 hours. Let you go with a warning. Make sure you know who's in charge." Marcus processed this, looked at the bars, at the camera mounted in the corner, with the red light that was either recording or meant to make you think it was recording. At the door at the end of the hallway that led deeper into the station. "When did they bring you in?" he asked. 2 days ago, Curtis said. "They'll probably let us go tomorrow morning. Standard pattern." Jerome nodded. "They're just trying to make a point. Remind us we're not welcome, that we should keep our heads down and our mouths shut." Marcus leaned back against the wall, let his eyes drift closed, let his breathing slow. On the surface, he looked like he was resting, maybe even sleeping, but his mind was running, calculating, planning. He had 72 hours, maybe less. Blake would process him, file the paperwork, transfer him to county lockup if he wanted to make it stick, or just hold him here for a few days and let him go like the others. But Marcus could not afford to wait, because Valor was still out there, still in Blake's custody, still being starved and abused and forced into a role he was never meant to play. And there was something else, something Curtis and Jerome had said that was gnawing at the back of Marcus's mind. The thing about Tom Draven, about him appearing in the late 90s, about nobody knowing where he came from. Marcus opened his eyes, looked at Curtis. You said Tom moved here in the 90s. You know what year? Curtis frowned. Thought about it. 97, maybe 98. I remember because it was right after the flood. Town was rebuilding. He showed up, said he was from Colorado, had money, invested in local businesses, made himself useful. Why? Marcus did not answer. His mind was pulling up files, faces, names from 30 years ago, cases he had worked when he was a captain in the Army Criminal Investigation Division, before he switched to K-9 training. Back when his job was hunting down soldiers who thought they could steal from the military and get away with it. There had been a case, 1994, a lieutenant, young, arrogant, caught selling weapons from an armory in Texas. Assault rifles, ammunition, night vision equipment, sold it all to a militia group in Montana for cash. The CID had tracked him, arrested him, but before the court-martial, he had escaped custody. Lieutenant Thomas Walsh. Marcus's eyes snapped open. Curtis noticed. You okay? Marcus did not answer. He was thinking about Tom Draven, about the timeline, about the fact that a disgraced Army officer who escaped custody in 1994 might show up in a small Montana town in 1997 with enough money to buy his way into power. About the fact that Thomas Walsh and Tom Draven were the same age, same build, same background. About the fact that Marcus had been the one to arrest Thomas Walsh. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Heavy boots on linoleum. Getting closer. A guard appeared. Older man, tired eyes. He looked at Marcus. Reeves, you got a phone call. Curtis and Jerome both sat up straighter. Phone calls from holding cells were not standard. Not unless you had a lawyer, or unless someone with pull wanted to talk to you. Marcus stood, walked to the bars. The guard unlocked the cell, led him down the hallway to a small room with a table and a phone. No windows, just walls and a door and a phone sitting on a metal table. The guard pointed. You got 5 minutes. Marcus picked up the receiver. It was already connected. He did not say anything, just waited. A voice came through the line, male, older, smooth. The kind of voice that came from years of practice, years of telling people what they wanted to hear. Colonel Reeves, this is Sheriff Tom Draven. Marcus's grip tightened on the receiver. We haven't met, Tom continued, but I understand you had a run-in with my son tonight. Marcus stayed silent. Tom chuckled, low, almost friendly. Not much of a talker. I respect that. Military discipline. I appreciate that in a man. But here's the thing, Colonel. My son tells me you made some wild claims about training his K-9, about having history with the dog. Now, I'm sure you can understand. That puts me in a difficult position. Why's that? Marcus said, his voice flat. Because if what you're saying is true, if you really did train that dog overseas, then that means someone lied to me about where Valor came from, and I don't like being lied to. Marcus heard something in the background, a faint sound, like claws on concrete, like a dog pacing. Where is Valor now? Marcus asked. Safe, Tom said. Don't worry about the dog, worry about yourself. You're facing some serious charges. Concealed weapon, assault. Those are felonies. I did not assault anyone. That's not what my son says, and between you and me, Colonel, who do you think a jury is going to believe, a decorated police officer or a 72-year-old man with no fixed address and a history of erratic behavior? Marcus's jaw clenched. I have a fixed address, and I have no history of erratic behavior. Not what your file says. Marcus went very still. What file? The one we pulled when we ran your ID. Says here you were discharged from the Army in 2004. Medical retirement. PTSD, depression, suicidal ideation. Tom paused, let the words sink in. Says you spent 6 months in a VA psych ward in 2006. Says you've been on medication for anxiety and mood disorders for 20 years. Every word was true, and every word was being weaponized. Marcus closed his eyes and took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was steady. That has nothing to do with tonight, doesn't it? Tom's voice was still smooth, still friendly, but there was steel underneath now. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a mentally unstable veteran had a breakdown in a public park, started harassing my officers, made threats against a police K-9, and when my son tried to de-escalate, he pulled a knife. I did not pull a knife. Your son planted it. Tom laughed. Actually laughed. Come on, Colonel. You really think anyone's going to believe that a decorated officer with 8 years on the force versus a man with documented mental health issues who was found trespassing after dark in a closed park? Marcus opened his eyes, looked at the phone, at the scratched metal surface, at his own reflection, distorted in the silver. What do you want? He said quietly. Smart man. Tom's voice shifted. Business now. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to be arraigned tomorrow morning. Bail will be set at $50,000, which I'm guessing you don't have. So you'll sit in county lockup for a few weeks until your court date. And then, if you're very lucky and very cooperative, maybe we work out a plea deal, time served, probation, and you get to go home. And Valor, the dog stays with the department where he belongs. Marcus's hand tightened on the receiver until his knuckles went white. Tom continued. Or, and this is option 2, you cause problems, you make noise, you try to fight this, and I make sure you disappear into the system for a very long time. I've got friends in the DA's office, friends in the court, friends everywhere it matters. I can make your life very difficult, Colonel Reeves, or I can make it easy. Your choice. The line went quiet, waiting. Marcus thought about Valor, about the way the dog had pressed against his chest in the park, about the trembling, the relief, the desperate need for comfort that had been so obvious it hurt to see. He thought about the names on the memorial wall, about the handlers who had died, about the promise he had made to himself a long time ago that he would never let another K-9 suffer if he could prevent it. He thought about Thomas Walsh, about the lieutenant who had sold weapons to militias, who had escaped custody, who might be the same man calling himself Tom Draven now. And Marcus made his choice. I understand, he said. Good. Smart. I'll see you at arraignment tomorrow. Tom started to hang up, then paused. Oh, and Colonel, if you're thinking about trying anything stupid, remember, I know where you live. I know you're alone. I know you've got no family, no support system. You're one old man against an entire department. Think about that before you make any mistakes. The line went dead. Marcus stood there holding the receiver for exactly 5 seconds. Then he hung up, turned, walked back to the holding cell without a word. The guard locked him back in. Curtis and Jerome were both watching him. What was that about? Curtis asked. Marcus sat down, leaned his head back against the wall, and smiled. Not a happy smile. The smile of a man who had just been threatened by someone who did not know who they were threatening. That, Marcus said quietly, was a mistake. 3 hours later, 2 in the morning. The station was quiet, one guard on duty, skeleton crew. Most of the officers had gone home. Blake had clocked out at midnight. The building was running on minimum staff and maximum arrogance. The assumption that a 72-year-old man in a locked cell was not a threat, they were wrong. Marcus waited until Curtis and Jerome were both asleep, waited until the guard had made his rounds and settled back into his chair at the front desk. Waited until the only sound was the drip of the sink and the buzz of the fluorescent lights. Then he moved. The handcuffs were still on his wrists. Blake had left them on, probably forgot, probably didn't care. But Marcus had not forgotten, had been working the metal against his skin for the last 3 hours. Subtle, small movements, using body heat and friction to loosen the pins. It was an old trick, one he had learned in SERE training 40 years ago. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. The part of military training they don't talk about. The part where they teach you what to do if you're captured, how to pick locks, how to disable guards, how to survive when every advantage has been stripped away. Marcus pressed his thumbnail into the small gap between the cuff and the locking mechanism, found the pin, applied pressure, slow, steady, the kind of patience that comes from decades of practice. The first cuff clicked open. He froze, listened. The guard had not moved. Curtis and Jerome were still asleep. Marcus opened the second cuff, let them both fall silently onto the bench beside him, rubbed his wrist where the metal had bit into skin, felt the blood flow or return. Now came the hard part. The cell door was locked, electronic, controlled from the front desk. But there was a manual override, there always was, fire code, safety regulations, a backup system in case the power failed. Marcus stood, walked to the bars, reached through, felt along the frame until his fingers found what he was looking for. A small panel, recessed into the wall, painted over, but still there. He used his thumbnail again, pried the panel open. Inside was a mechanical lever, red handle, pull to release. Marcus wrapped his fingers around the handle, took a breath, pulled. The lock disengaged with a soft click. The door swung open an inch. Curtis stirred, opened his eyes, saw Marcus standing at the open cell door, started to say something. Marcus put a finger to his lips, shook his head, pointed at Curtis, then at Jerome, then at the door. The message was clear. Stay here. Stay quiet. Do not follow. Curtis stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once, closed his eyes, went back to sleep, or pretended to. Marcus slipped through the door, moved down the hallway, bare feet silent on the linoleum. They had taken his boots when they processed him. Standard procedure, but that was fine. Boots made noise, bare feet did not. The hallway led to a junction. Left went to the front desk, right went deeper into the station. Processing, evidence, locker rooms, and beyond that, the emergency exit, the one that was supposed to be alarmed but probably was not because budget cuts and lazy maintenance meant half the systems in this building had not been tested in years. Marcus went right. He moved like he had been trained to move. Weight on the balls of his feet. Center of gravity low. Arms loose. Every step deliberate. Every movement controlled. The muscle memory of 1,000 insertion drills. 1,000 night operations. 1,000 moments where one wrong step meant everything. He passed the processing room. Empty. Past the evidence locker. Locked. Past the break room where the coffee pot was still on and burning the last inch of liquid into tar. And then he heard it. Voices. Coming from around the corner. Two men. Talking. One of them was Blake. Marcus pressed himself against the wall. Controlled his breathing. Listened. Dad, I'm telling you he knows something, Blake was saying, his voice agitated, nervous. The way he looked at me when I mentioned your name, like he recognized it. The other voice was older, calmer, the same smooth tone Marcus had heard on the phone. Tom Draven. Blake. He's 72 years old. He's confused, probably has dementia. You're overthinking this. What if I'm not? What if he really did train Valor? What if he starts asking questions about where the dog came from? Then we handle it, same way we've handled everything else. There was a pause. Marcus could hear the tension even through the wall. The facility, Blake said. You want me to transfer Valor tonight? Yes, and make it permanent this time. No more second chances. If the dog won't fight, If he keeps refusing commands, then he's useless. And you know what we do with useless things? Marcus's blood went cold. Blake's voice dropped. What about the old man? I'll take care of him. You just focus on the dog. Get him to the facility. Get him processed. And Blake. Tom's voice hardened. This time make sure nobody follows you. Footsteps. Moving away. A door opened and closed. Engine starting in the parking lot. Marcus waited exactly 30 seconds. Then he moved. He found the emergency exit at the end of the hallway, pushed the bar. The door swung open. No alarm, just cold air and darkness and freedom. He was outside, barefoot, no jacket, temperature still hovering around zero, but free. The parking lot was empty except for 2 patrol cars and a civilian truck that probably belonged to the night guard. Marcus moved to the truck, checked the doors, locked. He moved to the patrol cars, also locked. But the second car, Blake's unit, had something Marcus needed, a K9 transport crate in the back. Empty now, but there were supplies, a leash, a collar, and wedged under the driver's seat where Blake had probably tossed it and forgotten. Marcus's wallet. He pulled it out, checked inside. Everything was still there. ID credit cards, and tucked in the back. A small card with an address written in his own handwriting, the address of his cabin. 20 minutes outside Helena, off Route 12, where he kept his files, his records, and his body camera from his security job. The camera he had been wearing tonight when Blake planted the knife. Marcus pocketed the wallet, looked around. The station was quiet. No alarms, no shouting. No one had noticed he was gone yet. He started walking, bare feet on frozen pavement. No coat, no boots. Just a 72-year-old man in a blood-stained shirt walking through a Montana winter night like he had somewhere to be. Because he did. He had a dog to save, evidence to secure, and a promise to keep. And nothing. Not the cold, not the pain, not Tom Draven or his entire corrupt department was going to stop him. Marcus walked for 40 minutes before he found a vehicle he could use. Not steal. Use. There was a difference. It was parked outside a 24-hour truck stop 3 miles from the station. A maintenance van, white, generic. The kind of vehicle that could blend into any background because it looked like every other working vehicle in Montana. The driver was inside the truck stop, visible through the window, sitting at the counter with a coffee and a newspaper. His keys were not in the ignition, but they were in the cup holder. Marcus approached from the passenger side, opened the door. The interior light came on. He froze, waited. The driver did not turn around, did not notice. Marcus reached across, grabbed the keys, closed the door soft enough that the click was swallowed by the wind. He got in the driver's side, started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot at exactly the speed limit, turned right onto Route 12, and disappeared into the darkness. The heater in the van did not work, or it worked but barely. A thin stream of lukewarm air that did nothing against the cold seeping through the doors and the floor and every gap in the metal shell. Marcus's feet were numb, had been numb for 20 minutes. He could not feel his toes, could barely feel the pedals under his soles. But he kept driving, kept his hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road and his mind focused on the next step. Then the next, then the next. Survival was a series of small decisions. He had learned that a long time ago. You did not think about the whole situation. Did not let yourself get overwhelmed by how bad things were or how impossible they seemed. You just focused on the next thing, the next breath, the next step, the next mile. Get to the cabin, get the footage, get to Valor. Everything else could wait. The cabin appeared in the headlights after 18 minutes. Small, 1-story, log construction, set back from the road behind a line of pine trees that had grown thick enough to hide it from casual view. There were no lights on, no smoke from the chimney, No signs of life, just a dark shape against darker trees and snow covering everything like a burial shroud. Marcus pulled the van around back, killed the engine, sat in silence for 30 seconds, listening to the wind, making sure he was alone, making sure no one had followed him. Then he got out. The cold hit him like a physical force. Worse now that he was not moving. Worse without the thin protection of the van's cab. His bare feet sank into snow up to the ankles. The shock of it made his breath catch, made every nerve ending scream. But he kept moving, stumbled to the back door, found the key under the third stone from the left, the same place it had been for 5 years, unlocked the door, went inside. The cabin was colder than outside, no heat, no insulation beyond the logs, just frozen air and darkness and the smell of wood smoke from fires that had burned months ago. Marcus did not turn on the lights, did not want to risk someone seeing. He moved by memory, across the main room, past the kitchen, into the small bedroom that doubled as an office. There was a desk, metal, military surplus, a file cabinet, also military surplus, and on the wall above the desk, a cork board covered in photos and papers and maps. Marcus pulled open the bottom drawer of the file cabinet, felt past the folders, past the old tax returns and medical records, and all the accumulated debris of a life lived on the margins. His fingers found what he was looking for, a small waterproof case, black, heavy. He pulled it out, set it on the desk, opened it. Inside was a body camera, the kind security guards wore, the kind that recorded everything and uploaded to a cloud server automatically. Marcus had been wearing it tonight, clipped to the inside of his jacket, positioned so it captured his chest-level forward view. It had recorded Blake planting the knife. It had recorded the entire confrontation. It had recorded everything. Marcus pulled the camera out, connected it to his laptop, waited while the old machine booted up. Glacier slow, the screen flickering to life with a pale glow that made the room feel even colder. He navigated to the footage, found tonight's file, 1945 to 22:30, 2 hours and 45 minutes. He scrubbed through it, watched himself sitting at the memorial, watched Blake approach, watched the entire confrontation play out in grainy digital clarity. And there, at timestamp 21:53, clear as day, Blake kneeling, opening Marcus's jacket, slipping the knife into the inner pocket, looking around to make sure no one saw, standing up, walking away. Evidence, undeniable, irrefutable, the kind of evidence that could end a career, could start an investigation, could bring down an entire department if it was connected to something bigger. Marcus saved the file to 3 different locations: cloud storage, external drive, email sent to himself with a delayed delivery. Then he set up a timer. If he did not check in and cancel the send in 48 hours, the video would automatically be sent to the FBI, the Montana Attorney General, and every major news outlet in the state. Insurance. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out the file he had been thinking about since the holding cell, the one labeled as CID case files, 1993 to 1995. He flipped through until he found it. Lieutenant Thomas Walsh, case number 940372, theft of military property, sale of weapons to civilian militia groups, arrested March 1994, escaped custody June 1994, still at large. There was a photo clip to the file, military ID, a young man, 26 years old, pale skin, light brown hair, cold eyes, the kind of eyes that look through you instead of at you. Marcus held the photo up to the light from the laptop screen, studied the face, compared it to his memory of the voice on the phone, the smooth tone, the practiced authority, the casual cruelty. It was him, 30 years older, probably heavier, probably harder, but the same man, Thomas Walsh, Tom Draven, Same person, different name. And if Tom Draven was Thomas Walsh, if he had been on the run for 30 years and built a new identity and clawed his way into power in a small Montana town, then everything else made sense. The corruption, the abuse of power, the dogfighting ring. All of it was just an extension of what Walsh had been doing 30 years ago. Stealing, selling, using his position to profit, and Marcus had been the one to arrest him, which meant Tom knew exactly who Marcus was. Had known from the moment Blake ran his ID, had probably pulled the file himself, had seen the connection, had realized that the old man in the park was the same captain who had put him in handcuffs 3 decades ago, which meant tonight was not about a D. It was about revenge. Marcus closed the file, stood up, walked to the closet, pulled out a heavy winter coat, boots, thick socks, gloves, started putting them on. His feet were still numb, but the feeling was starting to come back. Pins and needles. Pain. Good. Pain meant nerve damage was not permanent. He checked his watch. 3:47 in the morning. He had maybe 2 hours before the station realized he was gone. Maybe less if someone checked the cells early. He needed to move. The Helena Police Department kennel was not at the main station. It was a separate facility. 2 miles west on Industrial Drive, a low brick building that used to be a veterinary clinic before the department bought it and converted it into canine housing. 8 kennels, a small surgical suite, a training yard out back. Marcus knew the layout because he had volunteered there 5 years ago when he first moved to Helena, before his body gave out, before the PTSD got bad enough that being around too many people at once made him shake. He had spent 6 months helping with K9 training, basic obedience, scent work, building relationships between handlers and dogs. That was how he knew the building had terrible security. 1 camera at the front entrance, motion sensor lights that had not worked in years, and a back door that opened with a key card, or with a folded piece of plastic if you knew the right angle. Marcus parked the van 2 blocks away, walked the rest of the distance. The streets were empty, no cars, no people, just sodium vapor lights casting orange pools on snow-covered pavement and the distant sound of a train moving through the valley. He approached the kennel from the back, moved through the shadows, stayed low, stayed quiet. The way he had been trained to move 50 years ago in jungles that were nothing like this, but the principles were the same. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Do not silhouette yourself. Do not make noise. The back door was where he remembered. Steel, windowless, card reader mounted on the wall. Marcus pulled a plastic card from his wallet, an old hotel key from a conference in Denver, bent it at a 45-degree angle, slid it into the gap between the door and the frame, felt for the latch, applied pressure, twisted. The lock disengaged. The door opened. Marcus slipped inside, let the door close behind him, stood in darkness, listening. The building was not silent. There were sounds, low sounds, the hum of ventilation, the drip of water, and underneath it all, underneath everything, the sound of dogs breathing, of claws on concrete, of animals moving in confined spaces. Marcus's eyes adjusted. He was in a hallway, cinder block walls painted institutional green, fluorescent lights overhead but turned off, emergency exit signs providing the only illumination, enough to see shapes, enough to navigate. He moved down the hallway, toward the kennel area. The sounds got louder, more distinct. He could hear individual dogs now, the shift of weight, the scratch of a poem, the soft whine of an animal dreaming. And then he heard something else, barking, not aggressive, not the sharp territorial bark of a guard dog. This was different. This was desperate, frantic, the bark of an animal in distress. Marcus moved faster, turned a corner, entered the main kennel area. 8 chain link enclosures, 4 on each side, concrete floors, metal gates, each one with a small platform bed and a water bowl. Most of the kennels were occupied. Marcus could see the shapes of D's, German Shepherds mostly, a Belgian Malinois, a Labrador, all of them standing now, alert, watching him with eyes that reflected the dim light. But the barking was coming from the last kennel on the right. Marcus walked towards it. Every dog he passed watched him, tense, uncertain. But none of them barked. None of them growled. They just watched, like they were waiting to see what he would do. He reached the last kennel, and there was Valor. The dog was pressed against the back wall of the enclosure, standing, hackles raised, not in aggression, in fear. The barking had stopped the moment Marcus came into view. Now Valor was just staring, body trembling, ears pinned flat, eyes wide. Marcus's chest tightened. The dog was thin, thinner than he had been in the park. Ribs visible beneath the fur, hip bones jutting. The kind of weight loss that came from days of not eating. The water bowl was empty, tipped over. The platform bed had been removed. There was nothing in the kennel except concrete and chain link and one terrified dog. And there were marks, fresh marks, dark lines across the shoulders and flanks. Too regular to be accidental, too deliberate to be anything other than what they were. Someone had hit this dog, multiple times, with something hard enough to leave welts. Marcus knelt down, slowly, got down to Valor's eye level, made himself small, non-threatening. He did not reach for the gate, did not make any sudden movements, just knelt there and spoke. "Hey, boy." His voice was soft, barely above a whisper, the tone he had used 5 years ago in Afghanistan when Valor was still a puppy, still learning, still figuring out that the world had good people in it. "It's me. It's Marcus, you remember." Valor's ears twitched, still pinned, still flat, but the trembling slowed, just a fraction. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out something he had grabbed from the cabin, a piece of jerky, old, probably stale, but it was food, and this dog had not eaten in days. He tore off a small piece, held it up so Valor could see it, then tossed it gently into the kennel. It landed a few feet from the dog. Valor did not move, just stared at the food, then at Marcus, then back at the food. "Go ahead," Marcus said. "It's okay." Valor took one tentative step forward, then another, lowered his head, sniffed the jerky, looked back at Marcus, like he was asking permission, like he was afraid it was a trick. "Eat," Marcus said. Valor picked up the jerky, chewed once, swallowed, and then, slowly, the dog's tail moved, not a wag, just a small lift, a shift, the tiniest indication that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. Marcus tore off another piece, tossed it closer to the gate. Valor walked over, ate it, and this time when the dog looked at Marcus, the fear in those amber eyes had shifted. Not gone, but mixed with something else. Recognition, hope, trust. Marcus stood up, walked to the gate, found the latch. It was locked, but the lock was simple, standard kennel equipment. He pulled a small multi-tool from his pocket, used the flat edge to pry the cover off the lock mechanism, jimmied the internal pin. The lock clicked open. He swung the gate wide. Valor stood inside the kennel, not moving, like he was waiting for permission, waiting to be told what to do. Marcus knelt down again, held out his hand, palm down, fingers loose, the universal gesture, the invitation. "Come here, boy. Come on." Valor took one step, then another, walked out of the kennel on legs that shook, walked straight to Marcus, and pressed his head against the old man's chest, the same way he had in the park, the same gesture of trust and relief and desperation. Marcus's arms came up, wrapped around the dog, held him, and for the first time in 5 years, for the first time since Afghanistan, since the deployment, since the last time they had worked together. Marcus and Valor were together again. The dog was shaking, full body tremors, not from cold, from emotion, from the release of stress that had been building for days, maybe weeks, maybe months. Marcus held him, did not speak, did not move, just held him and let the dog feel safe. Let him know that whatever had happened, whatever was still happening, he was not alone anymore. After a long moment, Valor pulled back, looked up at Marcus, and the old man saw it, saw what he had been afraid he would see, the damage, not physical. Physical wounds heal. This was deeper. This was the kind of damage that came from betrayal, from being hurt by someone who was supposed to protect you, from being forced into a role you were never meant to play. But underneath the damage, underneath the fear and the stress and the confusion, there was still the dog Marcus remembered, still the puppy he had trained, still the partner he had trusted with his life. Marcus ran his hand along Valor's back, felt the welts, felt the dog flinch. He looked around the kennel area, at the other dogs watching from their enclosures, at the empty food bowls, at the overturned water dishes. This was not a training facility. This was a holding pen, a place to break dogs down, to make them aggressive, to turn them into weapons, or to dispose of them when they refused. Marcus made a decision. He stood up, walked to the next kennel, a Belgian Malinois, female, maybe 4 years old. She was pressed against the back wall. Watching him with wary eyes, Marcus opened her gate, stepped back, waited. The Malinois did not move. Marcus knelt down, held out his hand, spoke the same soft words he had used with Valor. "It's okay, you're safe, come on." The Malinois took one step, then another, then bolted out of the kennel and headed straight for the door Marcus had come through. She did not stop, did not look back, just ran. Because that was what you did when a cage opened and you had been locked inside too long. Marcus moved to the next kennel, a German Shepherd, male, old, maybe 8 or 9, gray around the muzzle, scarred. This one did not run when Marcus opened the gate. This one walked out slowly, deliberately, looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen too much, then walked to the door and waited. Marcus opened every kennel, 8 dogs total, including Valor. Some ran, some walked. One, a young Labrador, sat down in the middle of the hallway and refused to move until Marcus came over and scratched behind his ears. Then the lab stood up, wagged his tail once, and followed the others. By the time Marcus reached the exit, all 8 dogs were waiting, standing in a loose group, looking at him, waiting for direction, waiting to be told what to do next. Because that was what working dogs did. They waited for commands, for leadership, for someone to show them the way. Marcus looked at them, at 8 K9s who had been abused and neglected and cast aside, 8 animals who deserved better than what they had gotten, 8 lives that were worth saving. He opened the door. Go. 7 of them bolted, disappeared into the night, into the snow, into freedom. Valor stayed. The dog sat down beside Marcus, looked up at him, and refused to leave. Marcus looked down at the German Shepherd, at the dog who had recognized him, who had trusted him, who had been waiting for him. "You sure?" Marcus asked. Valor's tail wagged once. Marcus nodded. "All right then, let's go." They walked out together, man and dog, into the frozen Montana night. Behind them the kennel sat empty, 8 gates open, 8 cages vacant, and in the distance, getting quieter with every second, the sound of dogs running through snow, free for the first time in longer than any of them could remember. Marcus and Valor made it 2 blocks before the headlights found them. A black SUV, government plates. It pulled up fast, stopped hard enough that the tires locked and slid on the ice. The driver's door opened. A woman got out. Tall, black, mid-40s. She was wearing an Air Force dress uniform. Jacket unbuttoned, no hat, hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face was hard, professional, but her eyes were wide, shocked. She stared at Marcus, at the blood on his face, at the boots he had found, but the exhaustion written in every line of his body, at the standing beside him. Dad, Marcus stopped walking, looked at the woman standing in front of the SUV, at his daughter, at General Vivian Reeves, at the person he had not seen in 3 years, not since the funeral, not since the argument, not since she had told him he cared more about his work than his family, and he had not disagreed because it was true. Vivian, she took 3 steps forward, stopped, looked him up and down, taking in the damage, the exhaustion, the way he was swaying on his feet. What the hell happened? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, and then, finally, after hours of adrenaline and fear and forcing himself to keep moving, his body gave out. His knees buckled, the world tilted, and the last thing he saw before everything went dark was Valor moving between him and the ground, trying to catch him, trying to protect him one more time. Marcus woke to the smell of coffee and antiseptic. His head pounded. Every muscle in his body screamed. There was a weight on his chest that he could not identify at first. Then he heard the breathing, felt the warmth, opened his eyes to find Valor sprawled across his torso, the dog's head resting on Marcus's sternum, eyes closed, finally at peace. Don't move. Vivian's voice came from somewhere to his right. Marcus turned his head slowly. She was sitting in a chair beside the bed. Still in her uniform, though she had removed the jacket, her sleeves were rolled up. There were dark circles under her eyes, a coffee cup in her hands that looked like it had been refilled at least 3 times. They were in a motel room, generic, clean, the kind of place that charged by the night and did not ask questions. 2 double beds, a bathroom, a TV mounted on the wall that was not turned on. What time is it? Marcus's voice came out as a croak. 6:30 a.m. Friday. Vivian set down her coffee. You've been out for 3 hours. I cleaned your wounds. You have a concussion, possibly cracked ribs, definitely frostbite on your feet, and you're probably dehydrated. Marcus tried to sit up. Valor shifted, whined softly. Vivian stood, put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Not hard, just firm enough to make him stop. I said, don't move. Valor. Is fine. I fed him, gave him water, checked him over. He's malnourished, dehydrated, has welts on his back and flanks, but nothing life-threatening. She paused. Unlike you, who walked 3 miles barefoot through snow, broke into a police facility and apparently freed 8 dogs. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, at the daughter he had failed in so many small ways over so many years, the daughter who had every right to leave him in that street, to call the police, to wash her hands of him entirely. How did you find me? He asked. Vivian sat back down, picked up her coffee, took a long drink before answering. I got a call, 2 a.m. from a reporter in Helena, Sarah Mills. She said a little girl named Zara had sent her a video of you being arrested, of a police officer planting evidence. Vivian's jaw tightened. She said the video was going viral, that people were demanding answers, that she needed a statement from your family. Marcus said nothing, just listened. I was in D.C., had a red-eye to Helena book before I even finished the call. Landed at 5:30, drove straight to the police station. They said you had escaped custody. She laughed, not a happy sound. Escaped, like you were some kind of dangerous fugitive. I told them who I was, what I could do, and they gave me the runaround anyway. Tom Draven, Marcus said quietly. Vivian's eyes sharpened. The sheriff, yes, he was very polite, very professional, and very clear that you were unstable, dangerous, a threat to yourself and others. Did you believe him? No, Vivian leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Because I know you, and whatever else you are, whatever mistakes you've made, you're not unstable, you're not dangerous, you're just stubborn and reckless, and apparently willing to break out of jail to save a dog. Marcus's hand moved, found Valor's head. The dog's ears twitched, but he did not wake, just pressed closer. He was being abused, Marcus said. Starved, hit, forced to be something he's not. I know. Vivian's voice softened. I saw the video, saw the way he recognized you, the way he refused to attack. They sat in silence for a moment. The only sound was Valor's breathing, the drip of the bathroom faucet, the distant rumble of traffic on the highway. I'm sorry, Marcus said. Vivian looked up. For what? For not being there when you needed me, when your mother was dying, when you got promoted. When? He stopped, took a breath. For choosing the work over you. Every time. Vivian stared at him. Her eyes were wet. She blinked, looked away. You're here now. That doesn't make it right. No. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot, at the snow still falling. But it's a start. Marcus waited, gave her space, let her process. After a long moment, she turned back. When she spoke, her voice was all business again. The general, the professional. The body camera footage, do you still have it? Uploaded to cloud storage. Sent to myself on delay. Timer set for tonight at midnight. If I don't cancel it, the video goes to the FBI, State AG, every news outlet in Montana. Vivian nodded, pulled out her phone. Cancel it. What? Cancel the auto send. I'm taking this to the FBI myself, today, along with witness statements, the video from Zara, and my own report on what I found when I arrived in Helena. Marcus shook his head. Tom will have you blocked before you even get through the door. He's got connections. Federal level. He's got connections. Vivian's smile was cold. I am the connection. I'm a 2-star general in the United States Air Force with direct access to the Secretary of Defense. And I personally know 3 senators on the Armed Services Committee. She paused. Tom Draven might run this county, but he doesn't run me. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been tight for a very long time. There's more, he said. Something you need to know about Tom. He told her. All of it. The CID case from 1994. Lieutenant Thomas Walsh. The weapons theft. The escape from custody. The timeline. The photo. The voice. Everything. Vivian listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for exactly 10 seconds. Then she pulled up her phone, made a call. This is General Reeves, authorization code Alpha 7904. I need access to the military personnel database, specifically fugitive records from 1994 to present. She waited. Lieutenant Thomas Walsh, escaped custody June 1994. Fort Hood. Yes, I'll hold. She put the phone on speaker. Typing sounds, computer noises. Then a male voice came through. General, I have the file. Thomas Walsh, Lieutenant, Army, arrested March 1994 on charges of theft of military property. Escaped custody during transfer. June 10th, 94, still listed as at large. Warrant active, FBI most wanted list for. He paused. 16 years. Dropped off in 2010. Case went cold. Physical description, Vivian said. White male, 26 years old at time of escape, 5'11", 170 pounds. Light brown hair, blue eyes, distinguishing marks, scar on left forearm from childhood injury. Vivian looked at Marcus. Did you see a scar when you arrested him? Yes, left forearm, burn scar. He said it was from a camping accident when he was 12. Vivian spoke into the phone. Send me everything you have on Walsh, photos, fingerprints, last known associates, all of it. Secure channel. Yes, ma'am. Transmitting now. She hung up, looked at Marcus. If Tom Draven is Thomas Walsh, if we can prove it, this stops being local corruption. This becomes federal fugitive apprehension, FBI jurisdiction. Tom's connections won't mean anything. Marcus nodded. How do we prove it? Fingerprints, DNA, photo comparison. But we need to get close enough to collect them. She thought for a moment. We need to draw him out, make him come to us on our terms. He thinks I'm still on the run, Marcus said. Still a fugitive. He'll be looking for me. Then we give him what he's looking for. Vivian's eyes were cold, sharp, the look of someone who had planned combat operations. We go public, return to the scene, the park, the memorial, where this started. Marcus understood immediately. He'll have to respond. Can't let me just walk around free, makes him look weak. Exactly. And when he shows up, we have FBI waiting. Vivian pulled out her phone again, started typing. I'm calling in every favor I have. FBI, state police, federal marshals. We surround that park with enough firepower that Tom can't touch you. He'll bring Blake, other officers. Let him. Vivian looked up. You said there's video evidence of Blake planting the knife. We released that publicly before the confrontation. Make sure everyone knows what kind of man Tom Draven's son is. Make sure the other officers know they're backing a corrupt cop. Marcus felt Valor shift. The dog was waking up, amber eyes blinking open, looking up at Marcus, then at Vivian, then back at Marcus, tail wagging slowly. Good morning, boy, Marcus said softly. Valor licked his hand, yawned, stretched, then settled back down, content. Vivian watched them, her expression softened. You really did train him. 5 years ago, Afghanistan, he was the best K9 I ever worked with. Marcus's hand moved over Valor's head. Smart, loyal, brave, saved my life twice. He tried to save you again last night, when you collapsed. Marcus nodded. That's what he does. It's who he is. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice careful. What happens after we arrest Tom? After this is over? What happens to Valor? Marcus looked down at the dog, at the scars, the thin frame, the way Valor trusted him completely despite everything. He stays with me, Marcus said. If he'll have me, he's earned his retirement, earned his peace. Good. Vivian stood, walked to the door, stopped. For what it's worth, I'm glad you came back for him. I'm glad you didn't give up. I made him a promise, Marcus said quietly. In the park. I told him I'd come back. I don't break my promises. Not anymore. Vivian looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, opened the door. I need to make some calls, set things up. We move tonight, 7 p.m., the park, public, recorded, everything transparent. She paused. Get some rest, both of you. You're going to need it. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Marcus lay back, let his eyes close, felt Valor's weight on his chest, felt the dog's heartbeat, steady, calm, trusting. For the first time in 3 days, Marcus let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, this was going to work. The call came at 6 p.m., 1 hour before the scheduled confrontation. Vivian's voice was tight, controlled, but Marcus could hear the anger underneath. We have a problem. Marcus sat up. Valor lifted his head, alert. What kind of problem? Tom knows. I don't know how, but he knows we're coming. He's mobilized the entire department, 20 officers, riot gear. He's claiming you're an armed fugitive, dangerous. He's got authorization to use force. Marcus's jaw clenched. He's going to try to kill me. Make it look justified. Yes. Vivian paused. FBI is en route, but they won't arrive until 8 p.m. State police are blocked by a convenient traffic accident on the highway. Someone made sure we'd be outnumbered. So we cancel. Wait for backup. No. Vivian's voice was hard. We don't cancel. We adapt. Tom thinks he's got the advantage. Let him think that. Let him show up with his army. Let him make his move. And when he does, when he pulls his gun, when he threatens you in front of 200 witnesses with cameras, we have him. Marcus thought about it, calculated the risks, the variables, the things that could go wrong. It's a trap, he said. For him. Vivian's voice was certain. Not for us. Trust me on this. I've run operations in hostile territory. I know how to turn an ambush around. Marcus looked at Valor. The dog was watching him, waiting, trusting. What do you need me to do? Show up, 7 p.m., Helena Memorial Park. Stand in front of that wall, and don't back down, no matter what Tom says, no matter what he threatens. You stand there, you tell the truth, and you let him make the mistake. And if he shoots, Vivian was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she spoke, her voice cold. Then he shoots a decorated veteran in front of 200 people with cameras. And I personally make sure he never sees daylight again. Marcus took a breath, let it out slowly. Okay, we do it your way. 7 p.m., be ready. She hung up. Marcus looked at Valor. Guess we're going back, he said. Valor's tail wagged once. Marcus stood, checked his watch. 6:15, 45 minutes. He walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, looked at himself in the mirror, at the bruises, the cuts, the dried blood, at 72 years of wear written in every line. But underneath it, underneath all the damage, he saw something else. He saw the man he used to be, the soldier, the trainer, the one who did not quit, did not give up, did not break promises. That man was still there. Marcus dried his face, walked back to the main room. Valor was standing now, waiting, ready. Let's finish this, Marcus said. They walked out together into the twilight, into the cold, toward the place where everything had started and where, one way or another, everything would end. Helena Memorial Park was not empty this time. There were people, hundreds of them, lining the perimeter, standing behind police barriers, holding phones, cameras, signs. Some of the signs read Justice for Marcus. Others read K9 Lives Matter. Still others were simpler. Just a photo, Zara's photo, the one from the night Marcus was arrested, the one showing Valor refusing to attack, the one showing Marcus being handcuffed, the one showing Blake's face twisted in anger. The video had gone viral, over 2 million views in less than 48 hours. News stations had picked it up. National coverage. The story was everywhere. Corrupt cop plants evidence on veteran. K9 recognizes former trainer. Sheriff's Department under investigation. Marcus walked through the crowd, Valor at his side. People parted, let him through. Some reached out, touched his shoulder, whispered words of support. Others just watched, silent, respectful. He reached the memorial, the black granite wall, the 73 names, the bench where he had been sitting 2 nights ago when everything changed. Marcus stood in front of the wall, turned to face the crowd, the cameras, the lights. Valor sat beside him, calm, alert, watching. And then, precisely at 7 p.m., the lights arrived. 20 patrol cars, lights flashing, sirens wailing. They pulled into the parking lot, formed a semicircle, doors open. Officers climbed out. Riot gear, helmets, shields. They moved in formation. Textbook, professional, intimidating. And at the center, walking slowly, deliberately, Sheriff Tom Draven. He was tall, 6 feet, maybe 55 years old, gray at the temples, clean-shaven, wearing a sheriff's uniform that was pressed and perfect. He walked like a man who owned the ground he stood on, like a man who had never been challenged, never been questioned, never been afraid. He stopped 20 feet from Marcus. His officers fanned out behind him, a wall of uniforms and weapons and authority. The crowd went silent. Tom looked at Marcus, then at Valor, then back at Marcus. When he spoke, his voice carried across the park, amplified by the silence, by the tension. Marcus Reeves, you're under arrest for escape from custody, burglary, theft of police property, and assault on a law enforcement animal. Marcus did not move, did not react, just stood there with his hands at his sides and his eyes locked on Tom's face. I'm not running, Marcus said. His voice was calm, clear. I'm here, in public, surrendering myself, but I'm doing it with witnesses, with cameras, with the truth. Tom's jaw tightened. The truth is you're a fugitive, a criminal, a man with documented mental health issues who broke out of jail and vandalized police property. The truth, Marcus said louder now, speaking to the crowd, to the cameras, is that your son Blake planted a knife on me, fabricated charges, abused a K-9 that I trained, and you, Sheriff Draven, or should I say Lieutenant Walsh, you've been running from the war for 30 years. The crowd gasped, murmured. Tom's face went pale, then red, then cold. That's slander. It's fact. Marcus pulled out his phone, held it up. I have your military ID photo from 1994. I have your fingerprints from the arrest. I have case files, witness statements, everything. And it's all being sent to the FBI right now. Tom's hand moved to his weapon, fast, instinctive. His fingers wrapped around the grip, but he did not draw. Not yet. He was too smart for that, too aware of the cameras. Put the phone down, Tom said, his voice tight. No. Put it down or I will consider you an armed threat. I'm not armed. I'm not a threat. I'm just a 72-year-old man telling the truth. Tom's eyes flicked to his officers, to Blake standing 3 feet behind him, looking confused, looking scared, to the crowd, to the cameras, to the trap he suddenly realized he was in. If he backed down, he looked weak. If he arrested Marcus, he confirmed everything. If he drew his weapon, he became the villain in front of 200 witnesses. He had no good options, so he doubled down. Tom drew his weapon, pointed it at Marcus. The crowd screamed, people scattered, officers shouted, chaos erupted. But Marcus did not move. In Valor, Valor stood up, moved between Marcus and Tom, not aggressive, not attacking, just standing there. A living shield, the way he had been trained, the way he had always protected the people he loved. Tom's gun was aimed at a dog now, a retired K-9, in front of cameras, in front of the world. Call him off, Tom said, his voice shaking. He's not attacking you, Marcus said quietly. He's protecting me. That's what he does. That's who he is. I said call him off. Valor, Marcus said. Not a command, just a word, soft, gentle. It's okay, boy, I'm okay. Valor looked back at Marcus, then at Tom, then sat down, right there, between them, refusing to move. And that simple act of loyalty, that moment of a dig choosing to protect rather than attack, that was what broke Tom Draven. His hand trembled. The gun wavered. He looked at Blake, at his son standing there realizing everything his father had built was a lie, at the officers backing away, at the cameras recording every second. Tom lowered the gun, and in that moment, in that single moment of hesitation, a voice cut through the chaos. Federal agents, drop your weapon. 20 men in FBI tactical gear emerged from the crowd, from behind vehicles, from positions they had held for the last hour. They surrounded Tom and his officers, weapons raised, professional, absolute. The lead agent stepped forward, held up a badge. Sheriff Thomas Draven, also known as Lieutenant Thomas Walsh, you are under arrest for escape from federal custody, theft of military property, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Tom stood there, gun hanging at his side, face blank, defeated. Dad, Blake's voice was small, broken. What's he talking about? Tom did not answer. Just let the FBI agent take his weapon. Let them cuff him. Let them lead him away. Blake watched his father go, then looked at Marcus, at Valor, at the truth staring him in the face. I didn't know, Blake said, his voice barely audible. I swear I didn't know. Marcus looked at him, at this young officer who'd been so certain, so arrogant, so wrong. You planted evidence on me, Marcus said quietly. You abused that dog. You arrested innocent people because your father told you to. Maybe you didn't know about Walsh, but you knew what you were doing was wrong, and you did it anyway. Blake's face crumpled. He turned away, walked toward another FBI agent who was waiting to process him, to charge him, to end his career. Marcus watched him go, felt no satisfaction, no victory, just exhaustion. Vivian appeared beside him, still in uniform, face hard. It's over, she said. Is it? Tom's in custody. Blake's suspended pending investigation. The FBI is taking over the department. It's over. Marcus looked at the crowd, at the people cheering, at the cameras still recording, at Zara, the little girl with the purple coat, standing with her mother, waving at him. He waved back. Valor pressed against his leg, warm, solid, real. Yeah, Marcus said. I guess it is. 2 weeks later, same park, different atmosphere. The memorial wall had been cleaned, flowers placed at the base, new plaques added. One of them read, "In honor of all K9 handlers past and present." Another read, "This park is protected by heroes, both human and canine." 300 people attended the ceremony. Veterans, officers, civilians, news cameras, local and national press. The mayor spoke, talked about justice, about truth, about the importance of transparency and accountability. Vivian spoke, talked about her father, about his service, about his courage, about what it meant to stand up when everyone else stood down. And then, at the end, they called Marcus forward. He walked to the podium, Valor beside him, the dog wearing a new collar, a tag that read, Valor, retired K9 hero. Marcus looked out at the crowd, at familiar faces and strangers, at people who had supported him and people who had doubted, at Blake, standing in the back, out of uniform, facing charges, but present, trying. I don't have a speech, Marcus said, his voice quiet but clear. I'm not good at speeches. I'm better with dogs than people. Always have been. The crowd laughed, soft, sympathetic. But I want to say something about Valor, about all the K9S who served, who are still serving, who deserve better than what we gave them. He paused, looked down at Valor. The dog looked up at him, tail wagging. These animals, they don't ask for much, just food, water, someone to trust, and they give us everything. Their loyalty, their courage, their lives. We owe them more than a medal and a retirement no one cares about. We owe them homes, care, respect. We owe them the same honor we give to any soldier who served. The crowd was silent, listening. Valor came back into my life because someone was hurting him, using him, trying to break him into something he wasn't. And I couldn't let that happen. Not to him, not to any of them. Marcus looked at the crowd, at the 8 people standing together near the front, each one holding a leash, each leash attached to a dog. The 7 K9s Marcus had freed, all of them adopted, all of them safe. So if you take anything from this, if you remember anything, remember them, the dogs who served, who protected us, who loved us even when we didn't deserve it. And if you see one who needs help, who's being hurt or neglected or forgotten, do something. Be the person they think you are. He stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, people on their feet. Marcus just walked back to his seat, Valor following, content. After the ceremony, after the speeches and the photos and the handshakes, after most of the crowd had dispersed, Marcus sat on the bench in front of the memorial. Same bench as before, same spot, but this time he was not alone. Vivian sat beside him, not in uniform, just regular clothes, jeans, sweater, looking more relaxed than he had seen her in years. Valor lay at their feet, eyes closed, peaceful. What now? Vivian asked. Marcus thought about it, looked at the wall, at the names, at the promise he had made 3 years ago when he first sat on this bench, the promise to honor them, to remember them, to make sure their sacrifice meant something. Now, he smiled, small, real. Now I keep my promise to all of them. Vivian nodded, reached over, took his hand, squeezed once. They sat in silence. Father and daughter, man and dog, together. Finally, the snow had stopped falling. The sky was clear. The stars were coming out, and on the black granite wall behind them, 73 names watched over them. Silent, eternal, remembered. Marcus Reeves, Valor, and the promise kept.